Hello and welcome to this edition of The Fourth Gear. My name is Jeff Broadus. I'll be your host. And today we have a very special guest that probably doesn't need a lot of introduction. Many of you will be familiar with him. I've known him for a long time. He's a good friend, a great mentor, Mr. Dennis Gage from My Classic Car. Dennis,
Hey,
thanks for joining us.
Good to see you.
Good to see you again. I want to get into talking a lot about what you're working on, but before we get there, tell me a little bit about where you came from, because you had a real job before you became a big television personality. Tell me about where you came from, how you got to where you are today.
Well, I started out as a child, and how I got here was just a complete accident. I mean, that's the short version. But yeah, I mean, I'm a small town country boy. Grew up on a family farm and stuff like that, and was always a car guy because I grew up in the '60s. If you grew up in the '60s and you weren't paying attention to cars, not sure what you were paying attention to, because it was the first time, the big three had ever really marketed to youth. They did. I mean, they were like, the whole muscle car thing was just, hey, how do we sell more cars? What's this untapped consumer segment? It's the youth market. Well, what's the unmet consumer need? Well, it's the need for speed, and then so they put big engines and grocery getter sedans, and poof, you had muscle cars. So, I mean, I was a car guy my whole life, went to undergrads because I didn't want to stay on the farm, and majored in chemistry and physics, did quantum physics research and all that stuff. And then was actually, kind of crispy at the end of that career, and was supposed to go right out of grad school, but instead picked up the pedal steel guitar and toured for a couple years, opening for people like Charlie Daniels, Waylon Jennings, stuff like that. That was clearly going to shorten my life expectancy. So, I went to graduate school, made the decision staring down the barrel of a 45 in Selma, Alabama, and I went to grad school out west because I like climbing mountains and winter sports, camping and mountaineering and stuff. So I did that and climbed most of the peaks in the Pacific Northwest and got a PhD in chemistry on the side. And there's a guy that actually analyzed Mount St. Helens ash for, its health effects, and so that was my claim to fame there. And then went to P&G as a Procter & Gamble as a scientist, and then product developer, and one of the guys that developed. I worked on Pringles, I worked on cookies, and all sorts of food products in the '80s. I was made an offer I couldn't refuse to go to Bristol Myers Squibb to be a director of global product development. I did that for 5 years, and then got really sick of it and resigned while I was in Bangkok, Thailand. Actually, said I can't do this anymore. I quit, and I had to find a way back home, but I did. And I've been playing with this little show on the side, and it was like, if I'm going to make a change, I may as well try it now. I can always go back to corporate. But that was like, I don't know, 27, 28 years ago, and I never did go back to corporate. So I completely fell into this by accident. It was one of those happy accidents, but it was also it just worked. I just got lucky and it worked, and it was kind of catching lightning in a bottle. I caught it, and and I've been doing it ever since. So I mean, that's sort of the long and the short of it. But it was just not much has been planned. It just all kind of unfolds before you.
Now, can you talk about your automotive journey a little bit? How did you transition into what you do today? I don't think, decide, hey, I'm going to be a personality, have my own television show and travel all over the country and talk to car people. But that's kind of what you do. But how did that step happen?
Well, again, it was just a weird, like Bob Dylan would say, it's like a simple twist of fate. But it was just a weird chance meeting, really, with the guy that ended up being my business partner for about 15 years. But I was, I had this good day job as a director of global product development for a Fortune 500 company. But this guy who had been worked in television since college, and he quit the same job 4 times. But this time for sure, he quit, and because he wanted to start his own company, and he had an idea for a show, and that show was My Classic Car. And we had a chance meeting because he was just doing local commercials to pay the bills. And he was casting a commercial. He needed a turn of the century scholar looking guy. Well, when this is curled up, it's, pretty turn of the century scholar looking. And I get this call. He said, hey, this guy ran across your picture. He'd like to do this. It pays $25. I'm like, whoa, $25, I'll retire. So we did that commercial, and kind of got talking about cars out of the blue. I didn't know why, as we were leaving the wardrobe department. And, and he finally goes, yeah, I'm just doing these commercials at Bills, but I got this idea for a show. And I've been looking all over the country for a host. And there's these TV guys that don't know anything about cars, and these car guys that can't string 3 words together into a sentence. You seem to know a lot about cars. You're kind of a character. That's a hell of a mustache. Would you like to do a camera test? And if we get through this commercial, I'll do a camera test, see how that goes. And we did, and it went okay. And so that's what I was really playing around with on the side in 1995, while I was still working at Bristol Myers. And in 1996, the show got picked up in 1996. And I was, doing full time for Bristol Myers and traveling literally all over the world, a lot through Asia and stuff like that. And I would be gone in Asia for 3 weeks and then come home and change suitcases and character and go out and shoot television. And then after a year of that, I just, the only time I slept was on airplanes. And for years after that, every time plane engines came on, I fall asleep. I can now stay awake on a plane, but that 96 was a tough year, and that's when I just decided I can't do both these. I'm sick of this one, so I'm going to try that. And really it really did just take off from there, Jeff. I mean, it shouldn't have worked. I think of myself in this whole show as a bumblebee, which aerodynamically should not be able to fly, but it does, and nobody's told it. So I'm like, I'm just flying around. And I don't know any better, but it really did roll out that way. I mean, it just took off and never looked back. And in 27 years now, there's not been a week in 27 years that I haven't been on national TV on some network.
Wow.
Without a single miss. And that's actually a record in U.S. television history, a show in my category. I'm the OG, and the O part is getting, the old part is getting more prominent all the time, but yeah, I'm the OG.
And your program is extremely entertaining because you chatting with people, you're showing off their cars, you're talking to people who really don't know what it is to be on television. You don't know what they're going to say. You don't know what's going to happen. You're not 100% sure if the car's going to start, and you have to allow for all these circumstances when you're interviewing them. Tell me, is there a moment that you were absolutely trying to figure out how quickly do we resolve or change gears or correct this crazy problem while we're out here shooting?
Well, it's all the time. Just about every interview. But everything's in the moment. It really is. I mean, nothing is. There's no script in any of this. It's not really planned. It's like, even at a car show, it's like, hey, I can send you a list of everything that's going to be here. Like, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. It's like, I'll know it when I see it. In the moment, it'll be the right car, the right person, the right light. And really, the only skill I've actually got, Jeff, is that I'm easy to talk to. That's really it. I can make people forget that there's a camera. And so, I mean, I talk, people like I couldn't possibly do this. I mean, I'm like, well, look, we've been talking about your car for the last 10 minutes. Well, yeah, but well, that's all we're going to do. And I'm easy to talk to, and so people just, the camera disappears for them. And I'm able to talk to people that, normally would just, would just go catatonic if a camera was pointed at them, but they don't. And we just have a great conversation. I ask the questions I ask because I genuinely want to know the answers to them. It's stuff I don't know. And everybody thinks I know so much about cars, and I do, but that's because I have a near photographic memory and I know everything I've ever been told. So I know so much because I learned from people that know more than me. That's just it. And I just remember it. It's a curse, actually, because it's really, there's a lot of stuff crammed up in here, and it's sort of like Robin Williams, just not as funny, but it's just about that manic.
Well, you're an enthusiast, and you genuinely do love cars. And like me, I've never seen a car I don't like. It may not have the style or be a car I want in my garage, but behind every car is a story. And you have an art for drawing that story out and being able to put it on television, which is probably the reason you've been on TV for 27 years. And that is an art. Tell us about what is your first car purchase?
Oh, that was my first car purchase was I was age 15, and I bought a 1959 Thunderbird for $100. Uh, 100 bucks back in. This would have been like about 1967 or something. Carried the one. Yeah, it's probably about right. I didn't have a driver's license, this farm boy and stuff, and I always say that I remember buying that car. It was like, I was going to go look at this car, and it was like working all day in summertime, and you work till sundown basically on the farm. And so it's dusk, it's twilight, and I'm like, I gotta go see this car. And I go, and it's like, it looks pretty good. 59 T-Bird, the square bird, not the prettiest car in the world, but leather interior, and I'm like, all right, I'll take it, $100. And again, the sun's setting, it's twilight, it's dusk. And I always said I learned so much from that car. And probably the most important thing was never buy a car at dusk. Never, never buy a car at twilight.
It
Because
was $100. I mean,
yeah,
how wrong could you go? If
$100,
if it started,
yeah.
you could drive off the lot. How much risk were you really taking?
Yeah. Well, the next morning I looked out the window and there was this pink car sitting out there. And I said, I wonder whose that is. Turns out it was mine because in '59 Thunderbird had a color called Flamingo,
Hmm.
which was a really, really light pink and had a white top and a very light pink body that at dusk looked white. It wasn't white. so so I'm this farm boy with a pink Thunderbird. It wasn't pink long. But yeah, that was my first car. I drove it. I mean, that thing had been abused. I remember pulling the valve covers, and those rocker arms hadn't seen oil in decades. I mean, well, it was only about a decade old, but I mean, it was just this sludge up there. It wasn't even oily sludge. It was just like almost a dry sludge. And so, yeah, geez, I finally threw a rod in that thing in about 6 months' time, and retired it for $25 and went on from there.
I remember and I may not have the year right, but I might. I think it was a '56 Lincoln Premier when I was on the set
Yeah,
with you early on. We were
yeah.
shooting for a cover for my publication back then. And you had that '56 Premier. And I don't think you had had it long. I think you had just picked it up. But man, you were proud of it. You love
Oh,
that car.
to this day, I think that's one of the prettiest cars ever built. It actually in 1956 it won the design award for automotive, and it's this gargantuan car that carries its size so elegantly. It's so in '57 they completely destroyed that car. I mean, they put fins on it and stacked headlights, and Lincoln said, well, we gave it a facelift, and it was equivalent to putting a beehive hairdo on the Mona Lisa. But the '56 Premier, and it was Taos turquoise and star mist white. Oh my God, how '50s! And the thing's a block long, and I really love that car. I had that thing for probably about 15 years. It lives in Canada now, but I still think when I see one of those on the road, I just think that's a magnificent car. It's beautiful.
What cars today are you most interested in, or a specific car you're most interested in?
Well, I love all classic cars. To your point, there's always something in a car that I find interesting. Just something. I'm still looking for it in the Yugo, but it's got to be there. I haven't found it.
Maybe the
But every
fact
other
that car even existed makes it interesting.
yeah, really. How did you do that? And the show has kind of become known for off offbeat and off the beaten path cars because I've been doing this so long that I've really been Cuda Camaro Mustang to death. And not that I don't love those cars and haven't owned all of them, but I'm really looking for stuff that you don't see at every car show and that you may have never seen or you may have forgotten or was overlooked and underloved. That's still, I love them all in that respect. Really personally though, I've gotten rid of, geez, I had so many cars at one point, and I still have quite a few, but I've really gotten rid of most of my older cars over the years. That '56 Premier is gone, '63 Studi Hawk, GT Hawk, '63 Falcon Futura convertible, '60 V8, a '63 T-Bird, a '67 T-Bird, Suicide four-door. And the reason was I wasn't driving them enough. And boy, there's nothing worse for old cars than leaving them sit. They just they will return to the earth on their own. And when I realized that last time I fired that car up was a year ago when I had to move it so we could, clear the place out to shoot television in that building. It was like, it needs a better home. So now actually, while I still have I guess I have 8 cars and 8 motorcycles.
Wow.
But, yeah, but it would
Now,
used
do
to be
you
a home.
tour at all? I'm sure you go to a lot of local things. Do you tour? Do you like to go on a tour? And I know maybe you don't
I
have
toured,
time because of your program. You're
yeah,
already touring. You're out all the time.
I'm on tour. I've been on tour for a quarter of a century. Yeah, I mean, in cars, well, I've gravitated to what I now consider kind of future classics. So I mean, I've got a '99 Jag Coupe XK8 Coupe, which I think is just beautiful, kind of E-type DNA still in that car. And I've had E-type coupes and stuff. I've got an '06 Mercedes CLS, kind of the early first gen, what they call the 4-door coupe, which doesn't make any sense, but that's what they called it. It's really a fastback sedan, and I think it's stunningly beautiful. I've got an '02 T-Bird, when they brought back the 2-seater, the first year that they did
But
that,
yeah,
and a two-tone interior. The only year they did the turquoise and black. Oh, that's so cool. And a couple newer Lincolns that are incredibly fast and stuff like that. So I've got that. And the motorcycles are 7 of them are BMWs, and I have one kind of token Moto Guzzi. And so I do now with like with the Jag and the Mercedes and the T-Bird and stuff like these newer cars. Yeah, I'll take those. Drive out to Colorado, see my son, or up into Wisconsin for this or that, um, and on the motorcycles too. I mean, I do pretty, you know, they tend to be surgical strikes, like I've got 3 days, so I'm going to, I'll do 1,200 miles in 3 days, but I'll still do some, touring on bikes, like not as much as I'd like to, but I'm also dialing the production, the road time back a little so I can do a little bit more of this with the amount of life that I actually have left.
now, what was the best car you ever purchased? Where did you find it? And why did you buy it?
I mean, actually, that's a tough one because I really do love every car that I get into, and every time I get out of it, it's like, damn, I got to get me one of these. I think that my '63 GT Hawk is a pretty cool car. I think they're neat because nobody knows what they are. It was a really Euro looking car. People see those and they go, is that a Mercedes, or is that, is it I mean, it's got a kind of a T-Bird-esque roof. What is that thing? So I think that was nice. I do love that '56 Premier. So I think those are ones that stick out in my mind. But really, all of them have fond memories and good times associated with them.
Do you go out searching for a specific car you want, or do you have my problem? Or I'm gonna see it, want to buy it. I see it, I said, oh my God, I gotta have this. Next thing you know, it's in the garage. Hey, honey, guess what? Look who came to visit. Oh, and it's not
Yeah.
leaving.
Yeah, that happens. I would actually say that for the most part, I seek them out. Something will catch my eye, and then I decide I want one. And that was the way with the premiere. We were actually shooting, and this is way back in the early days of the show. We were shooting at IMO, International Mercury Owners Club, IMOA, up in someplace in a Chicago suburb. And I really like I like the 55, 56 Montclairs. I think that's a pretty car. I was kind of wanted one of those. But we
Big
were
car.
at this show, shooting this Merc show, and I was leaving it, and I went out just kind of walking through the parking lot, and there's this gargantuan, just gorgeous '56 Premier convertible in wisteria, which is that lavender. Oh my! And it's like totally over the top. And it was actually Jerry Capizzi's car. Jerry Capizzi's a big time collector in the Chicago area,
Yep.
uh, and he had some Mercs in the show, but he also had driven there in this Premier that wasn't even in the show, it was in the parking lot. And I had never seen one. I just missed that car. And I'm like, oh man, this thing is gorgeous. And that set me on this. I was on a 2-year long quest to find one. I didn't really even want a convertible. I just wanted a 2-door hardtop. And finally, I found them in red and white, stuff like that. That's too much. I want something that was, a little more '50s. And boy, that turquoise and white was so yeah. That was one that just really, I saw it and I had to have it. And most of the cars are that way. I'll fall in love with one somewhere and then decide that's the mission I'm on.
What's the car that got away?
There was a Lincoln Mark IV, a '72 Mark IV that I wish I bought, but it would have been those cars. Once I bought it, I would have gone, why did I buy that? Because I did that with my 67 T-Bird. I bought that because that was on the farm, and it was 1968. Because it might have been 67, but we lived in northern Illinois, northwestern Illinois, and my aunt lived in the big city of Rockford, about 60 miles away. They came out to visit on the farm, and they came out in the 67 Thunderbird, which is a really weird looking car, and it totally changed body style. It was like nothing looked like that car, and it just looked like it had landed from another planet. And I'm like a 15-year-old kid, 14, 15-year-old kid. I'm like, damn, oh man, that is so cool. And so all my life that thing was in my mind, and I ran across one on eBay or something. This was like over 20 years ago, and it was out in Vegas, suicide four-door. He looked at Phoenician yellow with a black bank top, looked in good shape. And I do this all the time. I tell everybody not to do it, but I do it anyway, which is I kind of buy cars sight on the scene, and I get a good vibe from the guy, and yeah, okay, fine. And I haven't been disappointed. I really don't think I've been disappointed. I've been kind of like, yeah, I guess it's okay. And this one was sort of that. It was like, it was completely original, solid as a rock, and everything like that. And I kept it. I just sold it like maybe 6-9 months ago. I had it for over 20 years, and I probably ran 4 tanks of gas through it. It was just, I never drove the thing, and I finally decided I had to sell it without driving it. Because every time I drove it, I went, damn, oh, this is so nice. Oh, man. And so I literally did sell it this time without driving it.
What is the purpose of most of your cars? Are you taking them to be judged? You take them to Concours events, on a trailer, or
I don't know.
you want to get in them, turn the key, and just drive them and have.
From 20 feet away, they look pretty good. And I had a guy, I pulled into this roadhouse kind of out by us, out in the country, a while back. I was driving a 63 Thunderbird, and I pull up, and I just get out and start walking in. This guy I know is coming up, goes, yeah, you need a paint job on that car. I said, if I painted it, I have to worry about where I parked it. And I went on this talk. I mean, my cars are nice enough, but I don't want anything that's over restored, because then I'll be freaked out. Oh my God, a paint, oh no, oh. And I don't want to be in that situation. I want to enjoy them. I want to be nice, and presentable, but I don't want to be obsessive about it, because the fun is really driving them.
You've had my classic car for, gosh, ever since, and perhaps that's the first time I met you, was when you were involved with my classic car. Tell me a little bit about, what are you working on today? Where are you going? What's your future? You've been extremely successful with that program. It has a huge following. Obviously, you've been doing it for 27 years. It wouldn't be if it were different. What are you working on? What's happening?
Well, we're still doing the show. I mean, amazingly enough, I really did travel a lot. I mean, I fly about 100,000 miles a year, and it takes its toll. I've got 2 million miles with Delta alone, and they love me. And like I said, I'd like to kind of get my little bit of my life back, and enjoy a little bit more of what I've got left. So, we're still doing 26 episodes a year, which nobody does anymore, but we still do. But I'm also, because I've got a quarter century of archival footage that is just, magical stuff. It's timeless. That's the other beauty of it. It's absolutely, a 69 Camaro is only cooler now than it was in 69. And it won't be cooler still 5 years from now. It's not like I was doing a show on the 2022 whatever, and in 2023 nobody cares.
Right.
So the stuff I've got is timeless. You joked about it early on, but I really look and sound pretty much the same as I always have. The show hasn't changed a bit and never got any better. It is what it is, and it seems to work. And so you're able to dig back into this archival stuff that people have never seen, or parts of it they've never seen. So we're creating some stuff out of archival footage, and then still producing new things, which keeps me out in the public eye and keeps me, current, and feeds the little bit of travel desire that I still have. It's a lot smaller than it used to be. So we're doing that. Certainly the internet and streaming has changed the world drastically. I've been on cable TV for 26 27 years, and through that alone, I reach 100 million households a week. But then I've got 300,000 subscribers on YouTube, so we have a truly global audience. And I get from people from all over the world. It'll come in from Thailand, or it'll come in from Eastern Europe, and I know because I know what the script looks like, the alphabet looks like, but I can't read it. The comments will come in, and I'll either Google translate them or whatever. So I mean that, and I know in Bangkok, that caricature I use. There's T-shirts with that caricature on there in Bangkok all over, because there's a car club that just loves me. So we got this global audience through things like YouTube, and then just streaming in general. So now we're on Pluto, which is a big streaming platform, and we're the predominant show on their Cars channel. So reach hundreds of millions of people.
And that I've been with you at events like SEMA, where I've walked with you on the floor. We don't walk far. You get stopped every 3 steps. Somebody,
it's the glasses that get
yeah, I'm sure it's the glasses. I'm sure that's it.
Gotta be it.
But people stop you. They ask you for all kinds of things. It might be an autograph. It may be a picture. You are amazing in the way that you interact with these people, which has, I'm sure, a lot to do with your popularity. What is the most memorable experience that you have, or perhaps that makes you laugh a little bit when you think about it?
Well, I mean, to your point about, people, do stop me, everywhere. But I mean, and I appreciate that. I mean, I appreciate that people like the show. And my general life philosophy is that I treat people the way I'd like to be treated. I mean, it's simple
Imagine
enough.
that, huh?
It seems like the right thing to do. And so, I mean, I think I'm a genuinely nice guy. I try to be. I mean, that's sort of my contribution to the world. I try to make it better one person at a time. And I met lots of people over the years, and just people I can't believe I did. Carol Shelby, and I'm sure you over the years met Carol and he's just this really gracious guy. Here, this guy is almost a god to American racing and automotive enthusiasts and stuff. But he was always just such a gracious person, and
He was real. He was approachable.
he's very approachable. And
He'd tell you what he'd take, whether you like it or not. He's going to tell you what's on his mind, which really made him such a unique character.
So just I appreciate that you take the time to chat and stuff. He goes, Dennis, I mean, really, it's what you do that keeps this whole thing going. And he's like, completely flips it around and tells you what a great guy you are. And that's incredible. And I think, so, I mean, Carol's somebody that sticks out in my mind as just a really great guy that I was, glad I got to know and got to know reasonably well. Of course, Leno's a good friend and has been a great friend to the show. He's been on like 40 times the years.
And, he's another very nice, very approachable guy.
He's
I've
real.
been to his garage. I've seen him several times. I've known him forever. He always says hello. He remembers who I am. He is another one like you. He gets stopped. You can't walk 3 steps with a guy. I mean, that's just the way it is. But I've never seen him get upset. I've never seen you get upset. I've never seen you turn people away. I've never seen you put your hand up and say stop. And maybe it's the persona, but that in itself says a lot about your character, and perhaps again why your show was so successful.
It don't hurt. And Jay's a bit of a model for that, because I mean, you really captured him. This guy's got a really big stage. And yet he's real, he's grounded, he's gracious, and I think that's a good role model.
Yep. As we kind of wrap things up a little bit, what is the best advice you could give someone who wants to get started in this hobby, perhaps buying their first car, or they've got a little money, they love cars and they want to get started? What advice would you give them?
My advice is always go buy the best restored or fixed up car you can afford, and let that owner take the 50 cent on a dollar hit that you invariably take. Everybody, when people go, I found this, I could fix this up, and I'm like, don't do it. Don't do it. Unless this car, unless you were born in the back seat of that car, and therefore you must fix that car up, go find one that's just like that car that's already been done, because you'll never ever get your money back. I mean, it's just, I mean, Leno's kids about it. It's like, look, if you're making money in this hobby, you're doing something wrong. You do it for the love of it. It costs way more than you think it costs to do a restoration, or I mean, it, don't. My advice is don't buy a fixer-upper. Buy the best thing you can afford. I mean, and get over the emotions. Yeah, but that was Uncle Bob's car. Yeah, fine, fine. There's a really nice one just like it over here for for the same price, and they've already put twice that much money into it. So I think that, but I also believe it doesn't. I mean, really, a four-door post 65 Le Mans is a fun car with a six banger in it. I mean, you're the only, I guarantee you're the only kid on the block that's got it. So even if Aunt Bessie's got this old thing in her garage, hey, it's fun. It doesn't have to be this, this Hemi powered, whatever. Hey, they're all fun. And in fact, the quirkier it is, I think the cooler it is. It's like, again, people get upset with me sometimes because I'll walk by all these, well, you don't know, but there were only two of those Mustangs that were optioned that way. Yeah, but to everybody else, it looks like a Mustang. Look at this 65 Le Mans four-door post. Oh my God, when was the last time you saw one of those? Original. So I mean, that's the stuff that I think actually stands out. Because there's Mustangs at every show. There's, when was the last time you saw a 65 Le Mans four-door post? I mean, really, I don't even know what it looks like. Come to think of it. But if I saw one, I'd probably go, hey, that's pretty cool. So, I think it's like, hey, just get something you can afford that's fun. Manage your dreams of turning it into a Pebble Beach winner. And, again, let somebody else take the loss, and it's your gain.
So basically, buy what you like, drive it, and enjoy it.
Yeah, have a good time. Just have fun.
And closing thoughts. Talk about your program. Where can we find you? How do we get a hold of you? How do we watch the program? How can we get more of Dennis Gage?
Well, Dan, I'm everywhere. The main network is Motor Trend is the big dog these days. So we're Motor Trend Saturday mornings, 8:30 Eastern. We run on MAV TV about once a day. It's 30 sometimes a month. Pluto runs all the time. I mean, and of course you can 24/7 see us, find us on YouTube. And so, I mean, it really is. And there's like 700 episodes or something. I mean, and now we're dicing them and blowing out all these episodes, these interviews that we had to cut down for TV, but they're way longer. So we ran this thing that's over 20 years old. It was a Carol Shelby Lost interview. It's an hour and 38 minutes on YouTube, and
Wow.
and we used 3 minutes of that in a show 20 years ago, and we had an hour and 38 minutes of lost Carol Shelby interview, and that thing has now over 1 million views. It's amazing. I mean, it's just Carol talking, and for an hour and 38 minutes. So we've got thousands of those things on YouTube, and more coming. It's never going to end.
Is there a blooper moment that still makes you kind of chuckle a little bit? You think about it, and the beauty of what you do is you could cut, rewind, take another shoot, go at it a few times. Unlike what we're doing here, it's live streaming. If something happened, a dog jumps in my lap, we got to deal with it.
Not too. It's funny because a lot of shows will put together blooper reels and stuff like that. And when we try and do that, we don't have many. I'll have an occasional bobble and something I say, but it's not. We're pretty surgical. It's like, here we go. And so we've had things fall over and stuff like that. But for the most part, this stuff is as if live almost, and it goes off pretty well. Well, it's really looked at another way. It's all one big blooper.
Well, keep keep doing what you're doing. Your shows are extremely entertaining. You seem to find a way to bring out the best in all the people you interview. That is an art. And just keep doing what you're doing. Keep making us smile. And I sure appreciate you joining us here today.
Always a pleasure, Jeff. Great seeing you, my man. We'll do this again sometime.
Yeah.